Hello, my sleepy travelers. Tonight, let your thoughts drift gently into the magical world of ancient Greece, a land where marble temples gleam beneath moonlit skies, and the sea whispers stories older than time itself. Here, the footsteps of gods echo across quiet mountains, and tales of brave heroes rise like soft embers glowing in the dark. If these peaceful journeys bring you comfort, you're welcome to leave a gentle comment or tap the like button. It truly helps the channel grow and continue sharing these timeless myths. Now, nestle into your blankets, breathe slowly, and let the ancient legends of Greece guide you deeper into the calm hush of the night. In a remote mountain village, tucked far from the roads that hurry toward the modern world, a quiet fire stirs to life. Its small orange breath flickers against the cold stone, and the locals call it a gara. Around this modest glow, stories long buried under dust and centuries begin to stretch awake again, as though summoned by the warmth itself. When the violet dusk drifts over the countryside like a veil, shadows lengthen, and the realm of old myths leans closer. Strange murmurs drift between the ash trees, and the silhouettes of distant caves seem to shift, as if something inside them has only just withdrawn from sight. Immortal nymphs, unseen by ordinary eyes, ready their nightly dances in the thinning light, while mortals go on unaware. High above, on the dim outline of Mount Olympus, ancient gods and radiant goddesses tend to their own affairs, beyond the scale of human thought. And as the night folds itself over this ancestral land, legends older than memory rise once more, patient and unhurried. So, gather with me beside the gentle embers of this fire. Let the hush of the mountains surround you, as though the very stars themselves are leaning over your shoulder. Tonight, the old tales, those soft, lyrical stories that echo through myth and shadow, are ready to awaken again. They say that after the first primordial beings emerged from eternal chaos, 12 mighty titans rose as the next generation of divine rulers. Cronus, one of these titans, seized power by overthrowing his father, Uranus. Yet even he could not escape the whisper of prophecy. He learned that one of his own children would one day rise against him. Terrified of losing his throne, Cronus swallowed each newborn as they arrived: Poseidon, Hades, Hestia, and the others, locking them away in darkness before they had even opened their eyes to the world. But Rhea, his weary and grieving wife, hid their sixth child. She spirited the infant Zeus away, replacing him with a stone wrapped in cloth. Cronus, thinking the bundle genuine, swallowed it without a hint of suspicion. Meanwhile, the child he meant to destroy grew in secret, raised in a quiet place, far from his father's reach. When Zeus finally came of age, he moved with the calm determination of a detective following a trail that had waited years to be solved. With a clever potion, he forced Cronus to cough up the swallowed children, still alive, still trembling, but free. Zeus then opened the gates of Tartarus and released the Cyclopes and the 100-handed Hecatoncheires. Gaining their allegiance, he prepared for a war that would shake the bones of the earth. For 10 long years, the Titans and the rising Olympians clashed like storms locked in combat. When the dust finally settled, Zeus and the younger gods prevailed. The defeated Titans were cast into Tartarus, sealed away in deep, unlit prisons where time barely moved. Even then, the world knew no rest. Giants and monstrous beings rose against the gods, hoping to undo their fragile order. Yet Zeus's lightning, sharp, relentless, and blinding, drove back every threat. At last, the new king secured his reign, and Greece drifted into an era of relative peace under the watchful eyes of Mount Olympus. Zeus took Hera as his queen, though stories tell that his passions wandered often, leaving trails of new deities across mythic landscapes. The gods, settled in their gleaming palaces above the world, enjoyed lives of divine comfort while overseeing the struggles of mortals far below. Poseidon ruled the seas, turbulent as a storm not yet decided. Hades kept solemn dominion over the realm of the dead. Others, Hephaestus with his hammer, Ares with his war cries, Apollo with his blinding brilliance, Athena with her sharp insight, Artemis with her bow, Aphrodite with her beauty, Demeter with her harvest, wove their influence across the earth. According to ancient poets, mortals once lived near the gods in harmony, drifting through a golden age without fear or hunger. But as eras passed, mankind changed. Violence grew, hearts hardened, and the distance between human and divine widened like a fault line. Hesiod, in a voice both weary and prophetic, warned that even now our lives might still be guided by the passions of those gods upon the mountain. The myths continue with countless tales of these divine beings and their encounters with humankind. In this first chapter of Greek myth, our attention turns to the tales of Troy. The city of Troy rose from a low hill near the waters of the Hellespont, founded by Ilus, a descendant of Zeus himself. He marked the boundaries of the city, settled there, and prayed for good fortune. At dawn the next morning, he found a large wooden statue lying before him, the Palladium, carved by the goddess Athena in memory of her fallen friend Pallas. To Ilus, its appearance was an omen, a silent clue left by the divine, promising protection for the city he had built. And so begins the long trail of mysteries, wars, and whispered prophecies that surround the legendary city of Troy. Polo appeared that night as quietly as a shadow slipping through an ancient doorway, carrying with him a single solemn charge: to keep sacred the old image, to guard it as one guards a secret whispered by the gods themselves. As long as Troy held that symbol of divine favor close to its heart, the city would remain untouched by ruin. Such was the promise. Yet men are men, even the noblest of them, restless, flawed, and always drifting beneath the unseen hands of fate. And the gods, in their distant heights, had tempers that could stir like storms over the sea. So it was only a matter of time before events began to tremble at the city's edges. The sanctity of Troy, its marble towers, its golden streets, its proud people, would soon be tested. For Troy was destined to become more than a city. It would become a legend whispered across ages, a battleground where the greatest heroes of Greece crossed blades, where the most powerful Olympian gods interfered with mortal lives, and where beauty itself set empires trembling. Of all the ancient tales, the stories of Troy run the longest and burn the brightest, and like many legends, they begin with a woman of breathtaking grace, and a man cast away from the noble blood that should have been his birthright. For years, Troy's name had been stained by the anger of certain gods, wronged, insulted, or simply slighted by the city's rulers. Their grudges lingered like smoke in the rafters of a great hall. Only under the sharp-minded, swift-footed king who later ascended the throne did the city begin to breathe again, blossoming once more under careful, superstitious leadership. He was a cautious monarch, one who seldom risked a misstep, for he believed a single error might loosen his grip on the destiny of his beloved land. One night, his wise queen, Hecuba, dreamed that she had given birth to a flame, a burning firebrand that crackled in her arms. The dream chilled the king to the bone, and so, when their youngest son was born, he was taken from them, carried under cloak of darkness to the lonely heights of Mount Ida and left there to die. The child's name was Paris, but fate had other plans. Paris did not die. A bear nursed him. Mountain herdsmen took him in. Among the quiet pastures and murmuring pines, he grew tall and strong, broad-shouldered, bright-eyed, admired by the young men of the hills. He knew nothing of his royal blood, nothing of the palace that might have been his home. He believed himself merely a shepherd, living peacefully with a mountain nymph of rare beauty in a small and humble dwelling. In those rugged heights, he was known not as Paris, but as Alexander. Then came the day that shifted the course of worlds. The afternoon sun had laid warm gold over the slopes, and Paris was tending his flock, content with the simple rhythm of his life, when a figure stepped out from between the trees. Hermes, the messenger of the gods, swift as a whispered thought, stood before him, studying the youth with a mixture of awe and curiosity. There had been an argument among the immortals, Hermes explained. 3 goddesses, each radiant, each magnificent, had demanded judgment in a matter of beauty. Zeus himself had chosen Paris, believing the shepherd to possess both fairness of face and clarity of judgment. "Zeus bids thee judge freely," Hermes said, his voice echoing softly through the quiet mountain air. "And the Father of gods and men will shield thee in whatever truth thou speakest." Paris listened, bewildered yet enthralled, as his calm life cracked open like an egg beneath the weight of destiny. The first goddess to appear was Hera, queen of Olympus, her presence a sweeping command of power and poise. She told him of a wedding feast, Peleus and Thetis, and how Eris, goddess of discord, had been slighted by not being invited. In her fury, Eris had hurled a golden apple into the banquet hall, an apple engraved with the words, "For the fairest." It had landed at the feet of Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, 3 who believed themselves the most beautiful in all creation. Now Paris must choose. Hera offered him lands richer than any he could imagine, wealth that would make kings kneel. Athena stepped forth next, promising wisdom sharper than any blade and glory in battle so great his name would echo for generations. "Judge the prize to me," she murmured, "and thou shalt be renowned as the bravest and wisest of mortal men." Then came Aphrodite. She moved with a quiet, confident grace, her beauty soft and luminous like moonlight drifting across calm water. Leaning toward the shepherd, she spoke in a voice that seemed to warm the very air between them. "I can offer thee gifts sweeter than gold or conquest. Choose me, and I shall grant thee the love of the most beautiful woman to walk the earth." Paris, though already wed, felt his heart stir. He hesitated only a moment before placing the golden apple in Aphrodite's hand. Her smile lit the mountainside, and the color that rose to Paris's cheeks lingered long after she vanished. It was still with that glow upon him that Paris set out the next day for Troy, to compete in the games held each year by King Priam in memory of the son he believed he had lost. Paris had never set foot in the city of his birth, yet when he stepped into the arena, his strength, passion, and quiet confidence carrying him from contest to contest, he surpassed every challenger, even the young princes of Troy who were, unknowingly, his own brothers. And when jealousy flared in their hearts, when anger tightened their jaws and darkened their eyes, whispers spread among them, whispers of an accidental arrow that might be loosed in his direction, the kind of whisper that begins a chain of events from which legends and wars are born. In the quiet halls of Troy, where torchlight trembled against stone and every whisper could be mistaken for an omen, Cassandra cried out. Her voice, thin, sharp, and urgent, cut through the air like a warning bell at midnight. She spoke without understanding her own words, as though some unseen hand turned the key inside her mind. "Do not raise your hand against your brother." The princes stepped back, unsettled. Priam, however, looked upon Paris with a joy bright enough to soften even the cold marble beneath their feet. With open arms, he embraced the son he had long believed lost, and in that single moment, Paris was welcomed back into the golden shadows of Troy, as though destiny itself had brought him home. But destiny has a habit of leaving clues, small, quiet, dangerous clues, and Cassandra, cursed with the burden of seeing them, was the only one who noticed. When the king charged Paris with a noble mission to sail to Greece and reclaim Hygiene, taken long ago by Hercules, every face in the court glowed with excitement. Cassandra alone felt a darkness curling at the edges of the future. She spoke again of ruin, of flames, of a war that would unmake Troy stone by stone. Her words drifted through the air like smoke, and, as smoke often is, they were ignored. Paris set sail, and along the way, curiosity, or perhaps fate, led him to the kingdom of Sparta, where Menelaus ruled beside Helen, the woman whispered about across the world. Her beauty was said to turn the heads of kings and the hearts of common men. But no tale, however extravagant, had captured the quiet power of looking at her in person. Even Paris, who had crossed seas and storms without trembling, found himself unmoored. Helen's own story was a labyrinth of mysteries. Daughter of Tyndareus, adored and pursued by suitors from every stretch of the known world, she had once been stolen by Theseus himself and worshipped like a goddess. When she came of age, those same suitors, armed with wealth, reputation, and flawless records of valor, vied for her hand as though she were a prize locked in some ancient vault. Even Odysseus, clever as a fox in moonlight, tried his luck. Yet Tyndareus, not wishing to insult any powerful man, followed Odysseus's cunning counsel. Every suitor was made to swear an oath, a binding promise to defend Helen's chosen husband against any threat, no matter how distant or dire. Menelaus was chosen, crowned king of Sparta, and Helen became his queen. Peace settled over their palace like warm wool, fine meals, gentle mornings, and a marriage that blossomed slowly into genuine admiration. 3 children were born beneath that roof, and all seemed safe. But safety is the first illusion in every mystery. One quiet day, when Menelaus sailed on an errand and left Paris as a trusted guest, the spell broke. The Trojan prince, driven by a desire so sudden it felt pre-written into his bones, took Helen by the hand. Together they fled across the sea, leaving Hermione behind, along with the treasures they had taken from Menelaus's home. Love, or something disguised as it, grew between them as their ship glided over calm, glassy waters. But calmness on the sea often masks something lurking beneath. The air thickened. The wind fell silent. Then, from the stillness, the waves parted and a monstrous shape rose into view. Paris pulled Helen below deck, his hand trembling around his sword. The creature, part sea, part nightmare, laid a dripping trident on the bow. It leaned in, heavy enough that the ship groaned under the weight. When it finally spoke, its voice was like stone sinking through deep water. Omens guide thy course, robber of another's joy. Across these waters the Greeks shall come. They will right the wrong done by thee. They will topple the towers of Priam. I see horses fallen for thy misdeeds. I see Trojans slain for thy sins. With that, it hurled its trident into the sky and vanished into the mirrored surface of the sea. The die was cast. Fate, once merely a whisper, had spoken in full. Paris stood, hollow, shaken. Yet love, or pride, pushed him onward. He steered the ship toward Troy, carrying both Helen and the terrible prophecy sealed within that encounter. Back in Greece, when Menelaus returned and found his palace stripped of treasure and wife alike, sorrow carved itself into his bones. Bound by oath, he called upon every ruler who had once sought Helen's hand. Each was obligated to rise. Each answered. Agamemnon, his brother, and the most powerful lord of the Peloponnese, helped him gather the greatest captains of the age. Their summons, carried on messengers' feet and carried further by rumor, reached Ithaca, where Odysseus lived in quiet happiness beside his beloved Penelope and their infant son, Telemachus. Odysseus knew the truth long before they arrived. An oracle had already warned him that if he sailed to Troy, he would not see home again for 20 long years. And so he attempted deception. When Menelaus and Palamedes came to his fields, they found him plowing salt into the earth, wearing a rustic cap, pretending madness. But Palamedes, sharper than most, placed the infant Telemachus directly in the path of the plow. Odysseus halted instantly, revealing the truth. The charade was over. Bound by honor, unwilling but unable to refuse, he joined the gathering host. Achilles too was summoned. His mother Thetis had tried to hide him, disguising him among the daughters of the king of Skyros, knowing the bloodshed that awaited him. But war has a way of tracking down even those who wish to disappear. And so, beneath the slow-turning stars, the greatest army ever assembled prepared to sail. Toward Troy, toward destiny, and toward the long night of a war that would echo across centuries. A war born of a single decision. A war foretold by one woman's unheeded warning. A war whose clues had been scattered long before the first blade was drawn, and in the silent hours before dawn, when even the gods seemed to hold their breath, the story of Paris and Helen became the first shadow of the greater mystery to come. In the quiet murmur of forgotten times, there was a secret whispered among the old investigators of myth, that Achilles, the brightest of Thetis's children, was never meant to survive his mother's grim attempts at granting immortality. Many infants before him had perished in the glow of her desperate rituals, held above hungry flames that licked at their small bodies. When Achilles arrived, she tried once more, but turned from the fire at the final moment, as though some instinctive dread tugged gently at her wrist. Instead, beneath a sky washed pale with morning mist, she dipped him into the enchanted river, whose waters promised invulnerability. Only the heel by which she held him escaped the blessing, a single unarmored detail in a boy otherwise wrapped in legend. He grew up among other spirited youths, eating the hearts of lions, chewing the marrow of bears, rituals that sharpened his instincts and honed his courage. In those early days, he was already well-liked, admired for his strength, for the calm ferocity in his gaze, and for a kind of quiet certainty that clung to him like an omen. But his mother foresaw what others couldn't, that the Trojan War would one day reach for him like a shadow stretching across a threshold. Fearing for his life, she hid him away in a distant court, far from the messengers of Menelaus. Yet secrets rarely sleep, and it was Odysseus, clever, relentless, who uncovered the truth. Disguised as a merchant of shimmering fabrics and delicate jewels, he arrived among the maidens with a tray that sparkled like stars scattered across velvet. The girls gasped with delight. Achilles did not. Only when the wily king set down a shield and dagger beside the trinkets did the young hero react, drawn to the steel with instinctive hunger. In that single motion, his disguise fell away, and silently, almost resignedly, Achilles agreed to follow Odysseus into the fate he had been denied. Far across the sea, in Troy, King Priam recoiled when word reached him of Paris and Helen. Menelaus had sent envoys, Odysseus among them, to demand her return. But Paris had not yet come home. Priam, cautious and old, kept diplomacy alive with courteous words and slow promises, though unease curled beneath every sentence he spoke. When Paris finally arrived, Helen at his side, the king and his sons found themselves overwhelmed by her radiance. Her presence softened judgment, blurred caution. They announced that she had come willingly, her love for Paris burning brighter than any bond known to gods or men. But even as they welcomed her, the city's women watched from doorways, whispering of the danger this foreign beauty carried beneath her calm smile. Paris walked the streets with Helen's hand in his own, but behind him drifted a trail of muttered curses. The people sensed what the princes refused to see. That war followed this couple like a silent hound. Soon the Trojans gathered their warriors, Hector the noble, Aeneas the steadfast, and prepared for the struggle they felt creeping toward them from across the sea. Meanwhile, the Greek fleet, more than 1,000 ships strong, assembled in a harbor locked beneath an unnerving calm. No wind stirred the sails. No waves pushed the keels. It was Artemis who held the air still, offended by Agamemnon's careless killing of her sacred hind. In quiet vengeance, the goddess demanded the life of his daughter Iphigenia. Agamemnon hesitated, trapped between paternal love and the restless impatience of his army. His men urged him to obey the goddess, and Menelaus, struggling with his own sorrow, attempted briefly to spare the girl, only to harden again under pressure of the gathering host. So Agamemnon deceived his own wife, Clytemnestra, promising Achilles as Iphigenia's bridegroom, and summoned the maiden to the camp. When she arrived, joyful and trusting, her father turned from her, ashamed, unable to meet her eyes. Clytemnestra sensed the wrongness immediately. She sought out Achilles and discovered he knew nothing of any wedding. Shocked, the young warrior revealed the truth, and the queen, flushed with fear and fury, rushed back to confront her husband. She found Iphigenia, kneeling, pleading softly for her life. And then, in the hushed air between one heartbeat and the next, the girl stood. She brushed her tears aside and spoke with a calm that seemed older than the camp itself. "If this must be done," she said gently, "then let me fall for Greece, for let the ruin of Troy be my wedding feast. Let my name rest in honor." Her serenity cut through the tension like a single, solemn note. She stepped onto the sacrificial altar beneath the cold gaze of the goddess. Calchas, the seer, raised the knife in trembling hands. The camp held its breath, but before the blade could descend, the girl vanished. Artemis, moved to mercy, had swept Iphigenia away to serve forever as a priestess in her distant temple. In her place lay a snow-white fawn, its coat sprinkled with the faintest trace of blood. A great cry of relief rose from the Greeks as Calchas declared the goddess appeased. A breeze stirred, first a whisper, then a rising murmur, until the sails of the waiting ships swelled with a sudden, powerful gust. The fleet lifted its anchors, and the warriors, eager and anxious, leaned into the wind that would carry them across the sea to Troy and to the long night of war awaiting them. The winds carried their stories far, past quiet islands, forgotten coasts, and lonely stretches of sea where the pale outline of Troy glimmered at dawn like a secret waiting to be uncovered. A war was coming, though no one yet understood how deeply it would burrow into memory, how quietly it would stain the years. The sun of the invaders had touched the Trojan shores, and with it came omens that rustled through the camps like restless ghosts. Achilles had once been warned, never spill the blood of a child of Apollo. Yet when he saw a distant figure casting stones at the Greek ships inching toward the walls of Troy, he reacted on instinct. One swift stroke, and the man fell. Only afterward did Achilles learn the truth. It had been Philoctetes, friend and warrior, dead before a caution could be spoken. A heavy gloom settled over the decks, an almost criminal silence, as though all waited for Apollo's retribution to drift out of the sky like a quiet sentence. Philoctetes had been a marksman of rare skill, but a serpent's bite left him with a wound so foul, so unmoving in its infection, that the Greeks, helpless and fearful, left him on the harsh island of Lemnos. There he remained, year after slow year, abandoned with his pain and loneliness, while the army that had once praised him sank into the daily despair of war. Soon after, Protesilaus, brave and young, leapt onto the Trojan shore and was struck down instantly by Hector, eldest son of King Priam. With that first death, the war's voice deepened. Zeus had decreed that humankind must thin itself, and so the gods joined the struggle, bending fate with hands unseen, all because of one mortal woman whose beauty had set these events into motion. For 9 long years, the Greeks hurled themselves at Troy's unyielding walls, walls shaped, the whispers said, by Poseidon's own hand. Hector, along with his 49 brothers, guarded the city with quiet devotion. Paris stood among them as well, resented by many, protected by few, yet bound to Troy's defense all the same. Diplomats, veterans, even men longing for peace, raised their weapons as one. For the city could not fall by siege alone. The Greeks, frustrated and hungry for any advantage, turned their fury upon Troy's allies, burning their towns, looting their homes, dragging their families into ruin. At one such plundered city, Lyrnessus, Achilles and his men seized 2 young women, Chryseis for Agamemnon, Briseis for Achilles. Only later did they discover that Chryseis served Apollo. A plague seeped through the Greek camp shortly after, chilling the soldiers with its cold precision. Agamemnon had no choice but to return her, and when he came back, he stole Briseis from Achilles as though she were a trophy, not a life. Achilles walked away from the war that night, armor cast aside, heart colder than any sea wind. Without him, the Trojans found an unexpected advantage. As months bled into years, exhaustion softened even the fiercest wills. A truce was proposed, not for peace, but for clarity. Hector himself suggested a duel between Paris and Menelaus, letting the 2 men decide Helen's fate. Swords flashed, hearts faltered. Menelaus, heavy with the weight of betrayal, cornered Paris against the walls. But Aphrodite, unable to bear the sight, descended like soft moonlight. One touch, and Paris vanished into a cloud, spirited away before death claimed him. Menelaus stood dazed, fingers trembling just inches from victory. From there, the gods toyed with mortal lives like evidence scattered across a floor, shifting alliances, tugging at pride, nudging anger into flame. Thetis cried for her son Achilles. Apollo fought at the side of Troy. Zeus favored the Greeks. The battlefield became a storm of divine interference. Night after night, the war dragged on. Odysseus and Diomedes killed Rhesus and stole his ghostly white horses. The Trojans retaliated by setting Greek ships aflame, their orange glow flickering across terrified faces. In desperation, Patroclus donned Achilles' armor. His silhouette alone was enough to make the Trojans falter. But boldness carried him too far. He climbed the Trojan walls, only for Apollo to strike him down, stripping away sword and shield. Hector stepped forward and ended Patroclus's life with a single blow, an act that awakened Achilles like thunder rolling over the sea. When Achilles learned of his friend's death, something ancient stirred within him. His rage rang out across the camp, a sound so raw that even seasoned soldiers felt their breath catch. New armor arrived, gleaming like midnight frost, and Achilles marched toward Troy. The river god Scamander rose to block him, its waters surging with indignation. But Hephaestus dried the river with fire, clearing the way. Achilles plunged into the fray, a man possessed, a figure so breathtakingly fierce that many warriors simply froze, undone by the sight. Hector met him on the field, intent on fighting, until he saw the flame burning behind Achilles' eyes. Fear seized him. He ran. 3 times they circled the city walls before Achilles overtook him, striking him down in a moment as swift as a whisper. Troy mourned, their sorrow echoing like hollow drums. Penthesilea came with her Amazon warriors. Achilles cut her down. Thersites mocked her death. Achilles silenced him with a single blow. The war teetered on madness. Even the gods grew weary of the hero's pride. Apollo, still holding the grudge of earlier crimes, guided Paris's trembling hand. One arrow, only one, slipped through the chaos and struck Achilles' heel, the single part of him left mortal. The great warrior fell. Grief blanketed the Greek camp. Men who had seen and survived horrors now wept openly. But grief, like all storms, eventually settled into resolve. Achilles was honored with rites fit for kings, and when the smoke of his funeral fire faded, the Greeks steeled themselves. Their strategists' minds sharpened, their patience thinned. Ajax fell into madness and died by his own hand. Still, the war trudged on. Zeus appraised the battlefield like a judge weighing evidence. Troy must fall, but not without Heracles' bow, and not without Achilles' son, Neoptolemus, waiting far away in Skyros. The Greeks brought the youth, trembling but willing. Another condition surfaced. The Palladium, Troy's sacred statue, had to be stolen. Odysseus slipped into the city disguised as a beggar, speaking softly, acting small, hiding his brilliance beneath layers of dust. He found the guards asleep and moved with the measured care of a man picking locks in the dark. He seized the statue and crawled through a filthy drain, mud and sewage clinging to him until he emerged beyond the walls, clutching the stolen relic. Behind him lay Troy, still standing, but no longer safe. Ahead stretched the unraveling end of a war that had thrived for far too many years. Night had settled over the ancient world like a heavy velvet curtain when the truth became impossible to deny. Troy was a city on the edge of its final breath. Its proud towers still stood, but the glow that once shimmered from Laudium, that strange protective brilliance, had long since faded. And without that otherworldly shield, Troy felt exposed, vulnerable to the clever hands and restless minds of men like Odysseus, whose patience was as sharp as the knife he carried. Everyone sensed it, the quiet dread, the thin crack of fear under the doors, the feeling that something unseen moved closer every night. And yet, Troy held on. Perhaps that was why Odysseus, guided once again by the quick, whispering mind of Athenian, devised one last, unsettling idea. In the secret hours before dawn, craftsmen were summoned, men used to carving quiet stories into wood, and they were ordered to build an enormous horse, a strange thing, tall enough to cast a shadow across the sand. Inside its wooden ribs, they carved a hidden hollow, large enough for 50 chosen warriors. Odysseus selected his finest, the ones who walked lightly, the ones who could hold their breath for a long time, the ones who understood silence in the way a detective understands a locked door. Then, with the kind of calm that makes the heart uneasy, the Greek fleet pushed away from the bay. sails catching a mournful breeze. They left behind their fires, their footprints, and one man, Sinon, whose nervous stance and trembling hands made him appear the perfect, abandoned prisoner. But Odysseus waited only just beyond the curve of the land, hidden in the hush of the water, watching with the stillness of someone waiting for a confession. Sinon played his part well. The Trojans found him, ragged and furious, claiming betrayal. And in their exhausted hope, their longing for the war to finally be over, they believed him. He spoke sweetly, winding himself into their confidence like smoke curling through a lattice window. So when he advised them, almost gently, to take the horse inside their walls as an offering to Athena, many nodded with relief. The inscription on the wood glimmered with promise, a gift for safe return. Exactly the kind of lie people want to believe at the end of a long nightmare. But Cassandra saw through it. She always had that curse, truth blooming on her tongue even when no one wanted its taste. She warned them the horse carried death, shadows and secrets, and Laocoon agreed. Yet as he ran to warn the king, 2 serpents rose from the dark sea, smooth and merciless, strangling him before he could speak another word. When they vanished into the waves, an uneasy silence followed, one that felt almost orchestrated. So, with ribbons and garlands, the Trojans dragged the towering horse into the heart of the city. That night, they feasted like children waking from a bad dream. Wine spilled freely, laughter echoed in the courtyards. The nightmare felt far away. But inside the horse's belly, 50 men waited in breathless stillness, each heartbeat a ticking clock. Odysseus lay among them, eyes half closed, listening to the shifting weight of nightfall. He knew the pattern of sleep in an enemy city. He could hear it in the slow dimming of the torches, in the soft collapse of footsteps along stone floors. Yet one person remained awake. Helen. She had lived too long with cunning men to trust an ending that arrived so easily. Something in the horse unsettled her, so she slipped into the temple's shadows and called out in the voices of the warriors' wives, gentle, loving, pleading. A clever trick, one that might have broken a lesser man's resolve. But Odysseus sensed the deception. He pressed his hand over each warrior's mouth, one by one, letting the silence swallow their instinctive hopes. They waited. Helen's footsteps faded into the night. Then came the moonlight, and the ropes, and the quiet thud of warriors landing on the earth. Troy was asleep when the killings began. Streets glowed with the pale shimmer of a city dreaming peacefully, while death walked silently across its thresholds. In his own courtyard, Priam was struck down. Menelaus stormed toward Helen's chambers, gripping his sword, only to falter when he saw her. Trembling, remorse carved into every word she whispered. His rage dissolved. He reached for her as though drawn by an old, familiar gravity. And she, with that calm, disarming beauty, stepped once more into his arms. The soldiers welcomed her onto the ship not as the cause of wars, but as the soft face that eased their hearts after so many brutal years. Elsewhere, chaos unfolded. Women were taken as spoils. Cassandra became Agamemnon's prize. Neoptolemus rose as a fierce young warrior, though grief shadowed his growing pride. Polyxena was sacrificed at Achilles' tomb to quiet the ghost that lingered restlessly in the wind. Aeneas, wounded and stumbling, was lifted by gods who whispered conflicting futures, Apollo urging vengeance, Poseidon offering patience. And so he escaped the burning city, losing his wife among the smoke, his name drifting toward the distant legends Rome would one day claim as its own. Queen Hecabe watched the destruction from her tower. She saw her children fall, Her servants flee, her city collapse into ash and ruin. When Odysseus claimed her as his captive, her grief twisted into something wild and unbearable. The legends say she transformed into a dog whose sorrowful cries haunted the shorelines of Troy for all eternity, a lament that even the waves seemed to echo. By dawn it was over. Troy, once a thriving heart of trade and song, was nothing but a smoldering skeleton, its walls cracked, its streets soaked with the memories of warriors long gone. The Greeks set it ablaze, and flames rose like a warning to all who might gamble love against the ambitions of men. Helen returned to Sparta with Menelaus. The heroes scattered, some toward glory, others toward storms that swallowed entire fleets. And the great city of Troy, glowing faintly in the final embers of its life, became a story whispered by travelers, a reminder to lovers that even the gentlest beauty can ignite a war that burns through generations.